So, good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to introduce our guest for today, Lee. Hello, Lee. How are you?
Hi, Jamie. I'm good, thank you.
Lovely. Some of you that have logged on before, you will recognise Lee. She did a talk last week, which was really well received on what it was like being a mother on probation. Today, we're going to focus on what it was like for Lee returning to society and how she managed to navigate her way from custody to the position that she's in today. So I suppose my first question for you, Lee, really is, before your release, how were you feeling about returning to society, and what were your initial concerns? Were you excited? Were you anxious? How did you feel?
I felt a lot of different emotions. I was excited to go home finally after those days, and then I was quite anxious about returning to home to be a mom. I was unsure about what was going to happen um, to me, and I was actually scared about coming home to what I was about to face, which was quite sad as well. So yeah, I don't think I gave myself time to process what was actually going to happen when I got home.
Okay, so you obviously spent time inside, which, for you was a prolonged period of time of the best part of 3 years. You kind of become institutionalized, don't you? So what were you most concerned about in terms of returning? What were the things that you were kind of like really apprehensive about?
Pace of life,
Okay.
first and foremost. So it's very slow in the system. The responsibilities that you have, just the day to day, and how you manage that is just very basic. So I think that was one of the big ones that was worrying me, and just the transition. Understanding that there was actually a transition that was happening that I didn't understand.
Okay. I spoke to a gentleman the other day, and he was saying he served a long sentence, a very long sentence, and he was originally from the Midlands, and
Yes.
he was finally released from a prison in London. And he said, obviously, after serving this extended period of time, he couldn't believe how quick the pace of life was, how the cars had changed, how people were wandering around with these little devices in their hand. And he was obviously given a transport pass in order to get home, but he really struggled to navigate the tube system and to get to the right train. And he said for him it was really, really daunting just getting from the prison to probation because of how much life had changed at the time. So, as well as obviously that apprehension and the pace of life and stuff, when you eventually kind of got back home, well, you'd said previously that you were moved to a different area. So how was that in terms of finding your bearings, a new location?
Cool. It started off, to be honest, it started off from the journey from probation back to the housing, to the area that I was from, which is an area that I've used to. I've been driving since the age of 17, so I know the area very, very well. And the person I was with didn't know the area, so I was like the navigator, and I'm like, yeah, just take this left, take this right. And I remember driving down a road that I lived on, and it was a road that takes you to many places, and there was like this big plant pot on the road, and I was just like, what's going on here? So I was like, okay, turn around, go the other way. There's other little roads that I know, and the same thing. And it was just like, I don't know where I'm going. And it was strange. I actually didn't know where I was going. So it started from my own community. I didn't even understand my own community area. And then I moved like an hour outside of that area. It's just strange because, like, when you said about institution, when you're in a prison, it is like you are like within a certain perimeter, and you are only going left, right, straight, back, you know what I mean? And it's repetitive every single day. So navigating even to the shop was hard work. And I used to get really upset because I used to, like, you just go into the shop, like, and you went to the shop yesterday. How can you not remember? But it was, yeah, it's those little things. You don't realize that there's a big transition happening, and I'll be honest, for me, I was so scared about what life looked like in the state in February 2020, February 2021, after the COVID. So I wasn't sure about whether people were. I didn't know. I was quite scared about what people were doing. because of how we was treated and had to behave in the prison. Like, do you understand? It's quite scary. Yeah. It's even making my heart, like, it's quite scary to think, like, what are people doing? People walking outside, you know, because you hear so much different stories, you speak to people, and it's, yeah, and then you get outside and it's just like, whoa, like, I can't do it. And that wasn't understood. Like, I can't do it. I just need a minute. You know, like, I just need to sit in my box again, just for a minute, and just give me a minute. Yeah, just give me a minute.
Because I suppose being in custody during COVID, obviously you only see what's on the TV. You're incarcerated. You're only seeing a certain, so you don't actually know what's going on in society. So then when you're released, I suppose that anxiety of, you know, what does society look like? I've seen all this stuff on the TV. I've not actually had the perspective myself. So what does it go and look like? How does it work? When do I go out? It must have been quite a scary time, really.
It was more, to be honest, it wasn't really the TV. It was my family. So it was my mum. So, like, the first time I spoke to my mum, and the way that she sounded disturbed me. And she was like, there's no toilet roll. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, and she was like, I have to send you pictures. Like, you need to see this. She's like, and it was a lot to hear. And I was just like, what are they going through out there? You know, my sisters, my friends, you know, everyone was in a bit of the conversation had changed. Everyone it seemed like I was talking to someone in the prison.
Yeah, it was a strange time, obviously, for everybody. So if we return to, you know, you coming out of custody and stuff, in terms of your feelings, I've spoke to people in the past who've said that they've wanted to avoid people and they didn't want to be judged and didn't want to be labelled. How was it for you returning to, you know, people who'd supported you through it, returning to your mom, your sister, your daughter, your friends? How did that feel for you?
When I think back now, because like when I came home, I had my nearest and dearest at the house. They were waiting for me, which was nice, but I feel like I just wanted to be by myself. I remember even a couple of weeks before I was coming home, when I got to open, my mum was like, I want to have a surprise party. I was like, no. I was like, no, it's too much. I knew then
already.
It wasn't too, but I knew that there was a few people that I wanted to see. But even them, I think because they know me, they just allowed me to just be. But yeah, it was hard. And, you know, the hard thing is the conversations now that I want to have. People don't want to have that now. So it's like, you're home now, you know, let's move on. And it's like, there's a lot that's happened that I kind of need to talk about
and to deal with. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of then, you know, the return to society and stuff, a lot of people that I've spoken to in the past have sort of said it can be quite overwhelming with the fact that, you know, when you're in custody, you've only really got to worry about yourself. The work that you do is very limited in terms of it's not a 9 to 5. And another thing that people have expressed is about looking after your own kind of finances, really, because you get a set amount of money that you can spend as a prisoner. You can only order it on a certain day. So how was that for you, returning to society and looking after finances, looking at rent and council tax, all that kind of stuff that you're void from in prison? How did that feel and how did you navigate that?
It was a mess. To break down the mess, I came home with a significant amount of arrears on my account, on my rent account. I managed to get quite a lot of that taken off. But then there was the challenge of, I'm now home. The struggle is very real. People are not getting handed out houses. I have an opportunity here to keep, you know, what I have, which a lot of people didn't have that. They still had the duty of care. So they kept me on. So financially, it was like, I need to find a way to get out of this situation, even though I knew mentally I wasn't capable of doing that. So it was a mess. I got into debt. I burnt myself out. I thought I could go and do a full-time job. It was crazy. Created a lot of issues physically, mentally, emotionally for myself and my daughter. So finances, yeah, it was a lot.
And in terms of, like, you've made great strides since that. Do you feel like you maybe took on too much too soon? Is that, yeah?
100%. But I also felt like I didn't have an option because, like you said, what is standard in the community is very much different from what's standard in prison. I had a canteen once a week. I had a TV license which was taken out of that, and that was it. I chose to add things, which was like my £5 savings every week and whatever. But when you come out, you have to do it's the basics. Eating, you have to find the food, you have to find the beverage, you have to find the home, you have to find everything, everything. And then it's the bills, the standard bills, the gas, the electric, the rent, and then in this community, you have to have internet in order to be able to do most things. So you have to get broadband. So I got a phone line. I got a lot of stuff, and I'm now in debt because I'm paying them. It's like remembering to pay stuff. Like it's something that I hadn't done for a long time. But subconsciously, I thought to myself, well, you know how to do that. So and that was a struggle when you have done things before, and then you come after 3 years of not doing it, you don't realize that you actually don't know how to do that.
You need to relearn how to,
you need to write it down. You need to know when your bills, you need to, it wasn't easy. It definitely wasn't easy.
So for you, at the point of release, at what point did you start thinking about employment? Because obviously when you're working with probation, we're looking at reducing reoffending. And one of the biggest factors of reducing reoffending is obviously sustainable and stable employment. So at what point did you start looking for employment? How soon was it? If you were saying it was almost too soon.
Well, I moved to, when did I move to Leighton? Came out in February. So by May, I was in a full-time job, 8 to 6, crazy hours. I feel like crying even talking about it. It was too soon because, but the thing is that it wasn't. This is the thing. I came out and the route through the job center is like you need to get a job. The route through probation is like you need to get a job. My head saying, I can't work right now. However, I'm getting £500 a month. I cannot live on £500 a month. So I have to work in order to provide for me and my daughter. I have to make a sacrifice. So it was too soon because I couldn't, that mentally, that it just messed me up. Because I was working on autopilot. So I had severe anxiety, severe social anxiety, should I say, complex PTSD, and I'm just moving. I'm like work, school, home, work, school, home, and it was just like, and it just kept going until one day I just crashed. And yeah.
And was there any support for you in that? Because obviously, reducing reoffending employment is great, and the fact that you managed to get a job quite quickly, were you supported into employment? Were the opportunities there? It sounds like you got into it quickly. So were there lots of opportunities? Did you struggle as somebody with a criminal record to get any employment?
Okay, so first of all, when I started, I had to start going to the job centre, which was a struggle. So when I was going there, I was trying to find work. I was looking for work, but I was not getting anything back. So I was trying to find somewhere that I could get some assistance with my DBS. I think I managed to get some contact, but it didn't actually end up happening. So I had a friend that had got me a job in a hotel.
Okay.
So I did that. But yeah, it was too much. But I didn't get any support from probation or from the job centre. It was through a family friend.
Okay. So in terms of then, obviously, you managed to secure that employment. Once you'd got that employment, because again, your life changes. It's a different life in custody. When you first come out, you need time to readjust. You obviously didn't have that time because of the pressures that were on you. And I think it's important for people to realise sometimes that the pressures that are out there, you then get that first job and you go into working, very long hours with having your daughter. At what point then did you realise, well, at the moment, this is a little bit too much for me. This is, I need to heal before I can move forward or take a step back to take a step forward?
So my daughter started to develop like a bedwetting. So when I was trying to get that checked out, it came up that she had developed like quite a lot of anxiety around me going to work because although I hadn't told her that I'd been to work when I went to prison, she said that she said one day, "Oh, mommy, you got a spider at your work," and I just allowed her to just use that word as what it was. So the detriment of that is when I've come home and I've actually gone back to work, she's not saying anything, but she's feeling like every day that I may not come home because I've gone back to work, and the last time I went to work, didn't come home.
Yeah.
So that was when I was like, well, I have to stop, because obviously my day-to-day, the communication with us was changing. It was, she started to withdraw a little bit, you know, and just didn't make sense. But it was literally because she thought she didn't understand what was going on. You keep saying you're going to work, but then you keep coming back. So I had to explain to her, you know, what is actually happening. Yeah.
So, okay, and obviously that's, you know, very difficult. You're looking after your own needs, and then you're looking after that of your child as well, and balancing the two can be really difficult. And I think, you know, the point of these talks and getting people like yourself in is to look at, you know, it's not necessarily what's on the surface, it's understanding all the bits around that as well. So, and there is a lot of pressure, and sometimes, you know, people may move forward in a linear sort of way and a linear line, but then there'll be little barriers and setbacks along the way. So I was chatting to somebody, a gentleman the other day, and he'd said that he'd come out of prison, he'd managed to secure employment, everything seemed to be going pretty well, and then all of a sudden, and it was a few months down the line, they'd closed his bank account. So he got a letter from the bank saying, "We no longer wish to have you as a customer." And he tried to find out why. And they basically said, "Look, we just don't want you. You've got however many days to move your money." So even when he thought he'd got everything together, there were still little hurdles and barriers along the way. And he said that really affected him, because he then had to look at going and changing all his bills. He didn't want to go to a bank and say, "Look, I've been removed from this bank, so can I transfer?" in case they had an issue with it. So in terms of, you know, getting that employment, trying to get things together, there's always little barriers as well. Was there anything unexpected that kind of hit you after you'd come out that you perhaps weren't expecting, or you thought you'd got over and it reappeared? Was there anything like that?
Everything. What kind of shocked me? People, places, things. It was all. Can you hear me, Jamie?
Yeah, I've got you.
Okay.
So with that, how did you find, and again, you know, applying for jobs and stuff, what was your view on technology? And technology changed much in the time that you were away? And you know, because you don't have access to the internet, to phones, to emails while you're inside. So was that quite new and different for you?
Yeah, it was. How can I explain it? So I feel like when you've done something for 28 days, it becomes a habit. So in the prison, everything's paper. You have to do everything on paper. I think it needs to be understood, right? That I was in the community and I had a phone. I had WhatsApp, I had Instagram, I don't think it was Snapchat, but I knew how to use social media. And then I got remanded, and then I had a pod. So it was still, you know, connected to the outside world. I still was using the same things that people outside were using. And then you go to like HMPs and you use paper and you have to write everything down. And then and then you come into the community and it goes right back to technology. So I feel like because when I came out, it was more dependent, and technology, everyone depended on it more. That's been quite a challenge, you know, without having a smartphone. You know, you can't do things. Without having Wi-Fi, you can't access certain things, even for your own self, i.e. universal credit, journals, and like you said, emails and stuff. We had Email a Prisoner, but in the initial writing, I spent 3 years writing letters and writing applications and writing. So it's very different to writing emails and typing, which is something I was used to doing. So it's a lot of stuff that you don't realize until you're actually doing it. And then you realize, oh, okay, you make a mistake. You think, or you get there and it becomes overwhelming. Because I was very like that. Like, I know how to do this, I know how to do that, I know how to do this. And then when I'm trying to do it, I'm like, I can't do it. So I did. When you asked about support, I did have to get support in the end. When I was going through a lot, through the probation, advanced maneuver. they connected me with advanced Minerva, and I had to get her to write the letter, explain what I was saying, because I couldn't do it. And that was the first time I'd ever been in a position where I can't even write my own letter.
Yeah, you almost kind of unlearn how to do it. And again, there were lots of advances in technology during COVID. I think, technology progressed during COVID, particularly with the use of Zoom and Teams and that kind of stuff. Although it was around before, it kind of enhanced that. And I speak to a lot of people and they find that element difficult, because a lot of things now are email and they're online. But if you don't have a smartphone, it becomes really kind of difficult.
Yes.
So
my daughter was being homeschooled when I came home as well. So that was interesting, because watching her have a whole class it was weird. I was like, I couldn't get involved. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I didn't understand what was going on. It was very strange.
Yeah. So we've got lots of probation practitioners on. We've got some fantastic probation practitioners and some fantastic practices that go on. But for somebody coming out of custody, and it's great to hear how it was for you, what advice would you give to probation practitioners who are working with people who have just been released or been released for a few weeks? What advice would you give them in terms of working and engaging with people who've just come out?
I think, honestly, focus on your famous 3 C's, which is the communication. Communicate with them, ask questions about the journey. The prison journey is so important to a person's rehabilitation. It gets overlooked. So definitely, and talk about where they're at, because there's a lot of things that someone can do while they're in prison, which can keep them focused. It could be an idea, it could be a business plan, it could be anything, because they have a lot of those courses in there. But unless you ask, they won't reveal it. So ask questions, be consistent as well. If you say it's Tuesday, I think this is something that's come up quite a lot. Like, if you say it's Tuesday at 2:00, it just needs to be Tuesday at 2:00. I feel like the regime of timing in the prison is so strict, yeah, and you just become that. So when you come out, it doesn't disappear. A lot of these things create conflict with probation and people on probation because of timing and changing of appointments and change. Like, it's almost like, people that have, my experience, I didn't like change. I didn't like the changes. I didn't like it. So that's quite important as well. Understanding that there is a lot of undoing within a regime that is happening every single day, and yeah, they need order, punctuality. Strange. And anything, like I said before, anything that you do more than 20 days becomes a habit. So allow them to be accountable, for where they're at and how they're feeling about what they've been through. Because I feel like, I felt bad about what I'd been through. I felt like I couldn't talk about what I had actually been through. And those are the things that will stop someone from actually progressing and moving forward, because they're not addressed. That's my main advice.
Thank you. So again, I'm glad you touched on that, Lee, because we've tried to have like a golden thread through all of these talks in terms of, making sure that you're communicating with people, that communication is regular, it's clear, it's transparent. The fact that you're collaborating as well, so that when you're engaging with somebody on probation, you're involving them in the process. And there's a big difference when somebody's bought into something and they're involved in the process. They take more accountability for it, which is what you mentioned there, and that level of consistency. And I get, there are times when, we need to change times, we need to change certain things. But if there is a level of consistency with the practitioner, with what's being trying to achieve, with the language that's being used, with the regularity, then we'll eventually get there. But those 3 C's are really important in building and engaging that relationship. And a lot of people do it naturally. There's lots of good practice, and it's not teaching people how to suck egg. It's just making people aware of the different things that affect people based on what's happened and the regime when you are in custody. And sometimes, people make great strides, but they have little setbacks, and it's about how you communicate that properly, how you, formulate a collaborative plan, and how you get back to a level of consistency. And with you saying that has really kind of tied in with everything that we're trying to achieve. So I am conscious that we're kind of running out of time. So Lee, thank you very much for your input today. That was fantastic.